Don't rely on investment managers unless we can clearly and definitively know for sure that the managers have not bought into the far left political agenda. And we've been calling out the woke, as I call it, on Wall Street, which means the political far left influence that I suggest has no place in investment management. I've been an outlier for many years now, standing almost alone against woke Wall Street, saying that I'm right and that Wall Street is wrong. We have the beginnings of some indication that I am indeed correct. What you see behind me are performance numbers for a non-woke investment portfolio. Dear investment managers, over the past roughly 10 years, I've asked a lot of questions about the use of environmental, social, and governance, or ESG for short, and critical race theory, rebranded as diversity, equity, and inclusion, in your decision-making processes as you manage millions, billions, and trillions of dollars on behalf of other people. I've been exploring the use and implementation of these and the legitimacy of them. It seems now a lot of people are asking the same question. Years ago, it was decidedly uncomfortable to call you up and ask questions, including last year's release of a request for information from my office. Yes, I did actually formally issue a request for information of virtually all the investment managers that I have access to or contact with, including some that I just simply found on the internet and found an email address for. I received exactly 0 formal responses. I did receive a couple of casual emails and many phone calls from people saying effectively that they were perfectly happy to use things like ESG, and none of them offered a real, legitimate, and tangible explanation for what it actually is. There's an analogy I've been using for years now relating to realtors, and effectively it goes something like this, just so that you understand my perspective on the matter. Imagine, if you will, suddenly, one day, realtors all across the world stopped talking about the fundamentals of any given property and instead talked about feng shui. Of course, if that were to happen and you were considering buying real estate, you would balk. I've been balking and asking questions about what I consider to be far left influence in the world of investment management for a long time now. I haven't received any tangible answers. Thankfully, we're starting to see some court cases, some unions, pensions, and endowments, even some states' attorneys general, and one secretary of state that I'm aware of so far who are pushing back on the thing. Along the way, I've been doing vast research into the things that are not woke, that didn't go far left and didn't take the easy route, but just simply continued to do their due diligence in investment management. The companies out there, the people who manage and go about the daily grind of trying to make corporations better at what they do and develop new products and services. In other words, kind of the opposite of the push into what I call the globalist bubble. Let's be honest about what's happened here with investment management. It's been easy to move into branding investment products as sustainable or green or environmentally friendly or diverse, when in fact, there are no actual definitions that I've been able to find for those things. I've taken to calling this virtue signaling. You're welcome to refute that and tell me that you have some tangible process that can be identified and articulated to people like me who do manager searches on behalf of endowments, retirement plans, pensions, and the like. That's my job, and it has been for decades, to find the best of the best and then look at what you're actually doing and find tangible evidence that you're good at it. That has effectively almost evaporated for the past several years, much to the frustration of people like me who would like to know that you have tangible processes in place and that you are adhering to stringent fiduciary duties. We've been reporting on non-woke investment alternatives, which effectively puts us distinctly in the category of encouraging people to build their own portfolios. Don't rely on investment managers unless we can clearly and definitively know for sure that the managers have not bought into the far left political agenda of repackaging the same or virtually identical spectrum of investments over and over again. And you know what I mean by that. It's roughly the same 40-ish global mega cap companies that now comprise the lion's share of an overwhelming majority of mutual funds and things like them. So, as we've encouraged people to consider building their own direct portfolio, bypassing the management fees, bypassing some advisor fees potentially, and knowing what they own, and knowing that what they own is not politically engineered to the left, and it's not funding things that, in my book, clearly oppose Western values, the United States, and things like America First. I've been an outlier for many years now, standing almost alone against woke Wall Street, saying that I'm right and that Wall Street is wrong. We have the beginnings of some indication that I am indeed correct. What you see behind me are performance numbers for a non-woke investment portfolio that we have arranged. You see the trade dates. It is a narrow window. We're looking at about 8 months now. I became inspired years ago to start something called Unwoke Investing, which became Unwoke.Academy. We now have over 21 million views of our videos, and we've been calling out the woke, as I call it, on Wall Street, which means the political far left influence that I suggest has no place in investment management. Along the way, we've created portfolios, we have created investment guidance, we've created research, analytics, and reporting. Originally, the objective was just simply to call out the managers who had gone woke, and we've been spotlighting things like the use of ESG and DEI and things like it from investment managers and some corporations that have gone woke, as they say. And as the saying goes, go woke, go broke. We've been encouraging people to find better alternatives that are not funding those sorts of things. We got pushed into the direction of providing investment guidance to people who don't want to go woke. We've been talking to a lot of managers and trying to find some who simply stuck to the tried and true metrics of looking at fundamentals rather than far left virtue signaling like ESG, DEI, and adhering to the corporate equity index. That's been our search. Along the way, we've encouraged people to build their own portfolios, and we did one for somebody starting October 7th, 2024. What you see behind me are the investment returns from that portfolio. We took tried and true methods of just simply looking at the company, not virtue signaling, and we picked some and built a diverse portfolio of companies that are in a broad spectrum of different market sectors, just like most anybody would do who has any investment management training. So here's where we end up. Looking specifically at an investment portfolio that we launched for somebody that is not woke and did the trades starting on October 7th, 2024, we have investment returns of an average 42.79%, a weighted average for that portfolio of 33.03%. By way of comparison, looking at the S&P 500, which is commonly used as an indexing benchmark, that has returned 2.96%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average for the same span is 0.63%. For purposes of today's discussion, I'm not going to go into the manipulations that I believe occur in many different market indexes. I do suggest, in general, that there is some manipulation that's taking place in both indexes and specifically in the S&P 500. The mass consolidation of investment into a very, very few number of companies is inappropriate and unjustified. The fact that there is a virtue signaling label slapped onto it, like environmentally friendly or climate friendly or diverse or sustainable, is not acceptable. The companies that are invested in need to have some foundational due diligence applied to them. I suggest that many of the managers out there took their eye off the ball. I believe that they got caught up in a movement that was pushing toward a social agenda, masquerading as climate change, diversity, and social justice, none of which should have a place unless absolutely clearly defined in the management of trillions of dollars of hard-earned savings and the future retirement of our great American workforce. Until somebody can prove to me that there is some there in the climate change agenda and the social justice veneer implemented on investment management, I'm going to call it out as I see it. It's nonsensical. It's undefined and ill-defined, and again, has no place in the investment management of trillions of dollars. Putting a finer point on that, I have talked to many investment managers who suggest that they've gone about business as usual and they're looking for good investments, but then they add a secondary lens of environmental or social justice or that sort of thing. Again, I don't believe that that gives an out to prudent investment management. I suggest that everyone should go back to basics and implement what we know works until such time somebody can come along and explain to me and to the world clearly and articulately exactly what they're seeing, what the problems are, and how they plan to fix it by re-steering investments into some new form of investment, which is effectively, again, being honest here, meant investing only a very small number of companies that check all the boxes of that social justice agenda. That's inappropriate. It has ended up with a small number of companies vastly overfunded. And to give an example, I'm going to reference an economist I listened to recently who had a very good point to make. In a discussion, this economist made the following statement. He said, if you believe in the current valuation of Apple stock, then you believe that everyone will live in an Apple home, drive Apple vehicles, wear Apple devices, and stream Apple services. Obviously, that's nonsensical. Unless we somehow suddenly discover another planet to sell Apple products to, the current valuation of Apple is nonsense. I argue that it is ridiculously overvalued. And that also means that many companies have been underfunded for the past several years. Which brings us to the America First investment policy issued by Donald Trump and the White House on February 21st, 2025. If you've been following Unwoke.Academy, you may remember this background. We did a series of presentations on the America First investment policy and what investment policy statements actually are and what they represent. In my book, this stands out as one of the most important things that President Trump has done in his political career. And not surprisingly, it's been ignored by the media and avoided by politicians and woke Wall Street. Anyone working in investment management clearly knows what an investment policy statement is. Ignoring it isn't going to help. When you look at numbers like this and people like me doing this, what we're effectively doing is not rocket science. It's not magic. We're simply looking for good investments at a good value with reasonable characteristics for the companies we choose to encourage people to invest in without looking for woke virtue signaling. And it works. At least for 8 months, we have clear indication that getting back to basics works. And a special message to our listening audience who may be choosing not to be woke in their investment management. There are better alternatives out there. There are some managers who didn't go woke. They didn't buy into the corporate equity index pressures of adopting woke into their portfolio. They are doing a good job of looking out for your best interests, not for some sort of global agenda for social justice. At Unwoke.Academy, we continue to scour the earth for better investment options for you. That means giving you guidance on how to build a portfolio for yourself, even inside of your 401k. Yes, that can be done. It's referred to as self-directed brokerage account, or SDBA for short. If you don't have one available to you, watch some of the episodes where we talk about that. I did a 3-part series on 401k plans and how they work. You can go into your employer and request access to that. Also, inside of IRA accounts and things like them, there are options. There is a potential for you to build your own portfolio, reducing the investment management fees you pay and potentially the advisor fees that you pay. And we have the investment research and due diligence that can help steer you in a better direction, helping you build a portfolio that you can see, it's tangible, it's not hidden or a mystery, and you can be proud of what you own. It's a world of difference between some of the woke managers you're going to find out there, typically loaded into things like 401k, where they're a little bit out of sight, and not many people take the time to research what they're ultimately investing in. That's what we do at Unwoke.Academy. We've launched the Financial PMA to help people interested in it. If you have friends or family who work in finance, steer them to the Financial PMA and encourage them to take all that we're doing and duplicate it. We can collectively work together to defund the woke. That's the objective. Remember our mantra: Dis the globalist left. That stands for know where you donate, invest, and spend your money. It can and will come back and haunt us. Ultimately, it's up to us to fund the future that we want to see for future generations. I'm Jonathan Broadbent, creator and founder of Unwoke.Academy and the Financial PMA that came out of it. Thanks for listening.